What's going on, YouTube? My name is Omar. If you're new to my channel, I'm a 19-year-old entrepreneur who's just documenting his journey, and along the way is hoping to provide as much value as possible to anyone who is on the same journey as me. I wanted to go over a topic that helped me kind of read books. I want to go over 5 tips that really helped me a lot to develop a habit of reading, because reading is probably one of the most beneficial habits and probably has one of the highest ROIs that you can have, just in general, right? So my personal story is I have never finished a book until last year. So for 18 years, I have not read one book from front to back. I just simply hated books. I couldn't stand it. I thought it was boring, just like every teenager, right? And I kind of blame this on the school a little bit, because it's like the books I was reading in school didn't ever really have any interest to me. And it wasn't until last year where I actually completed one whole book from front to back. The book was about 400 pages. And after that, I have never stopped reading since. And I've got to say, I've learned so much just from developing a habit of reading, to the point where any problem that I have, I can easily solve it in a book. Just all I have to do is just simply open a book and begin to read. And whatever problem I'm facing, I already know, or I will know how to combat it, and I will know how to find a solution for it. And that's very powerful. And that's why I love reading, and I'm going to kind of give you a little bit of 5 weird tips that I use to help me develop this beautiful habit. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this video. So the first thing I want to state is some of the common struggles people may have with reading. And in this video, I'm going to give you tips to combat all of these struggles. But some of the common struggles people may have while reading may be in just simply not having enough time to read, not being able to sit down and focus enough to actually begin reading and get into the flow state of reading, or just not simply enjoying the process of reading at all. These problems are pretty common, and if you feel like you're having any of these problems, I completely understand, because I had every last one of them when I wanted to begin reading. And I've learned how to take a new approach to these common problems that helped me really develop the habit of reading. So the first tip that I would give to any new reader is picking books that will benefit you right now. I'm talking to my audience, which hopefully is people like me. So if you're like me, you're a young male on your entrepreneurial journey and you have a purpose in life, whether that be whatever it is. My purpose may be absolute freedom. Your purpose may be becoming the best trader, maybe becoming the best entrepreneur, whatever it is. We all have a purpose in life. And that's what you strive towards. Your purpose becomes your interest, it becomes your passion, and it becomes something you dedicate your whole life to. The best tip that I can give to anybody who wants to start developing the habit of reading is to pick a book that talks about a certain goal that you're trying to achieve. Pick a book that's going to help you get closer to a certain goal that you're achieving, because you're automatically going to be more interested in that book based off of what you're trying to pursue in life. You see, for example, if you're trying to pursue high ticket sales, or you're trying to become or develop the skill of sales, you should automatically pick up books that go over sales, teach you stuff in sales, because automatically reading these books, you're going to have automatic interest, because these books go over tips and tricks and certain things that you can try out right now to help give you a better result in sales and help get you closer to whatever your goal may be in sales. So it's an importance of picking out books that align with your current goals and passions. That's the number one thing. Do not read a book that is completely different from whatever you're trying to achieve in life. If you're trying to become a good boxer, please do not pick up a book on The Great Gatsby. No, you want to pick up a book on boxing. That's the first thing to make reading super simple, and it's the first tip that I would give to any beginner. Pick a book that interests you, and it's so basic, it's so talked around and stuff like that. This tip is so basic, right? But you would think that since it's basic, it's common sense. But no, you usually see people pick books that don't really help them in any certain type of way. And that can cause a big problem, because it can literally, you're going to get bored reading throughout the book, because it's not benefit you in no way. You have a certain goal, you have a certain task that you want to make progress in right now. Pick a book that's going to help you make progress. Pick a book that's going to give you certain tactics that you can use to move forward in your progress. That's the first tip I would recommend to anybody. You see, my first book that I read was The 48 Laws of Power. And the reason why I picked up this book was because at the moment I wanted to know what the hype was about. I've heard the book throughout TikTok, everybody recommending it to me. And simply, one of my keen interests was I wanted to become a powerful human being. And that's something that the book would help me with. It was going over 48 laws to being powerful. So why not pick it up and read it? And even though the book was 400 pages long, I still completed and finished the book because I was just simply interested in it. I was very interested in it. So every time I was reading, I was laser focused, locked in, because this is something that I know was going to help me to one of my current goals in life. So that's the first tip I recommend. Pick a book that align with your current goals and passions. Therefore, you will have interest for the book and you would want to keep reading the book. Don't pick a book that doesn't help you right now. The second tip I would give is set aside time for reading. This combats the problem of not having enough time. It doesn't matter how much time you set aside for reading. For me, I set aside 30 minutes a day, right? Or a chapter a day, bare minimum. But I knew when I was reading, right? Every day I got off work or every day before I go to work, I would have certain time blocks. I have a time block before work and I have a time block after work to simply start reading. And better yet, to know when I'm reading. Because making this decision now to know when you're reading, what you're reading, it takes a lot of mental load off of your mind. Instead of having to worry about when can you fit in time to read and what you're reading, you already have those two solved. You know when you're reading and you know what you're reading. So all you got to do when that time comes is read. It makes it super simple. And a bonus tip I would give for this exact tip is have absolutely no distractions. Throw away your phone, turn off your TV, lock yourself in a room. If this is a book that generally interests you, right, or helps you right now to whatever goal or purpose you're chasing right now, right, you're going to be interested to read the book. Now, when you're reading the book, you're going to be interested because it's going to go over topics and it's going to be relatable to you and your passion. So you're going to want to keep reading it, right? You already don't have to think about when you're reading it because you know you're going to read it every day at 1 p.m., right? And now you start to get into something called the flow state. See, the flow state in reading, which I've kind of felt, is where you are absolutely like one with the book. Like it's just you in the book and you're enjoying it. Right? You're enjoying the time. This flow state helps you read more. It's just that simple. And once you get into the flow state, reading just becomes that much easier. You start understanding what you're reading even better. You start enjoying what you're reading even more. And you start developing that habit of loving what you read. And that's one of the key habits if you just want to continue reading. So for anybody, the second tip that I can give is just simply set aside time for what you're reading or when you're reading, and to know what you're reading. And on top of that, lock yourself in a room with no distractions so you can enter the flow state and you can actually start to enjoy reading. So the first two tips I gave was basically to help you actually enjoy doing the action of reading, right? Now the second tip, the third tip that I'm about to give, it's a little bit of controversial tip. This is my opinion. For some people, you may not agree with it. For some people, you may. Do not read before you go to bed. Or I personally, let me change this. I refrained from reading before going to bed. Simply because I would get tired every time I try to read. Because reading is the fastest. Don't get it wrong. If you want to go to sleep fast, just open a book and start reading. You will go to sleep in a millisecond, right? But that wasn't the point. I didn't want to go to sleep early. I wanted to start reading more. I wanted to develop the habit of reading. And every time I read throughout the night, I would just constantly find myself giving myself excuses like, oh, I'm tired, I don't want to read, or anything of the matter that literally stops me from reading. So I learned that For me, the best time to begin reading is when the sun is out, shining bright. You hear the birds chirping, and you can have nothing but peace and quiet in some nature. That is actually the best time. Like for me, that's what I've found the best time because I'm the most alert, and also I'm not dozing off because if we really look at it, right? I've noticed that when this starts getting dark, my body is automatically trained that it's time to go to bed, right? So I'm already in the environment for sleeping. Everything in my body is saying sleeping. Me opening the book and reading is good. It helps me go to sleep faster, but that's not what I'm trying to develop. I'm trying to develop a habit of reading more. And I'm trying to actually read more, right? So that's the next tip I would give. Simply don't read before you go to bed. Try and read throughout the day where it's bright and you get a little sun and you're able to be awake and energized to read. The fourth tip I'm giving, and this is probably the most important tip. This is by far the most important tip I'm gonna give in this video because this is one of the key lessons I learned. Listen, if you're reading self-improvement books, self-help books, business books, whatever, I hate to break it to you, but most of them tend to have a whole bunch of fluff. They just have a lot of things in between to fill the book up, right? And if you're reading nonfiction, the point of reading nonfiction is to learn, is to extract the important parts, is to take some of the key parts and implement it into your life so you can start seeing results. You're not here for the case studies. You're not here for the stories. Although it is nice, you're here for the important tasks, the actionable steps that you can go ahead and take from that book and implement into your life to achieve a better life. So, the fourth tip that I recommend is skim through the unimportant parts. Look for the important parts. Look for the parts that are giving you actionable steps, and that's it only. When you get to the end of the chapter, usually most of the times, they usually have a summary at the end or a little bit of a summarized version of the chapter, basically going over what the main points of the chapter was. I suggest skimming through the chapter with your eyes first. Every chapter I read, I skim through it and I see, is there anything that remotely strikes my interest? And if I go through a couple of chapters and I'm noticing that's nothing really, I toss the book. I don't even pick it up anymore, right? Because I am here for one thing and one thing only, to extract value from this book. I don't care about the case studies. Yeah, it could be great conversation starters, but I don't care about that right now. I care about the value. So the fourth tip that I give is skim through the unimportant parts. It's not worth it. Look for the important parts and highlight it. And moving on to the fifth tip, automatically rolling over, is highlight what resonates with you. Highlight what is important to you. Look at each thing and highlight what is important to you. You see, anytime you come across a certain paragraph, a certain sentence that kind of sparks your interest or gives you a facial expression or makes your body express it in some way or just resonates with you deep down in your soul, highlight it. Highlight it. Because that's your intuition trying to tell you that this is something that you can use later on in life or is useful to know. Highlight it. And anytime you highlight an actionable step that you see that could help you, go apply it right away. You see, reading is a very good habit and it's probably one of the best habits to develop, right? Only if you're actually applying what you're learning. If you're just reading to read and you're not applying what you learn from the book at all, you might as well just go ahead and hop on TikTok and spend hours on TikTok because it's not going to be any difference from you reading hours a day to someone else who is on TikTok and scrolling for hours a day. This is just what I've learned. I've learned that, yeah, it's cool to read a book a week, but if I'm not implementing the stuff or I'm not using the things that I learned from the book, it makes no sense at all to continue reading, right? I'm reading to improve my life. How am I going to improve my life if I'm not applying what the book says, or I'm not applying certain things that resonate with me. So the fifth and final tip that I give is highlight what resonates with you and go apply it immediately. I hope some of these tips are going to be able to help you. These are just some of the main things that I've learned in my journey, and I'm hoping that it will be able to provide some value for you and you'll maybe be able to develop the habit of reading. With that being said, I hope you have a wonderful day. Peace and love.